Hi, my name is Michelle Fondin, and I'm the author of Help, I Think My Loved One is an Alcoholic, a survival guide for lovers, family, and friends. And welcome to my video forum on alcoholism and addiction. It's so good to see you guys again. And I love all of your questions and comments, and thank you so much for being so interactive on this YouTube channel. And I love that. I love your feedback. I love your questions. I love your comments. I think it's really good to have this community and create this community together. And it's a community that I've had since 2016, since I published the book. And I really love the way it's grown. And in fact, this group of people, you guys who are watching the videos on loving an alcoholic and having an alcoholic loved one in your life, is by far the most active group of people on my YouTube channel, and I absolutely love that. Today we're going to talk about how to be assertive without being aggressive. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is something that I have struggled with so much in my relationship, not only with my alcoholic loved one, but also in other relationships, and here is why. Someone who is in a relationship with someone who's an alcoholic, an addict, or someone who is severely dysfunctional in the way of mental illness, everybody who is on the receiving end of that actually develops really, really poor boundaries. And because as a person who is on the receiving end of the behavior that is associated with someone who's an alcoholic, with someone who's an addict, or with someone who's mentally ill, if you're on that receiving end, then you have learned to make peace, be a people pleaser, turn the other way, walk out of the room, not rise in conflict. And so as a result, you've learned to have very, 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 very poor boundaries. And I can say this because that was me. And also I know a lot of people who are in relationships, or their son or their daughter or their spouse or their boyfriend, girlfriend, their husband, wife, or adult child is an alcoholic or an addict, and they have learned through this dysfunctional relationship not to have good boundaries. And so they've learned to let those people kind of walk all over them. And it's a coping mechanism, you guys. Don't blame yourself. Don't say like, oh my gosh, why was I a doormat all these years? Why did I do that? It's a normal human coping mechanism to conflict. It's a normal human coping mechanism to a person who is not reliable, a person who's erratic, a person who has that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde personality, a person who's not consistent in their behavior, a person who has abusive behavior. And so you learn to develop these coping mechanisms just to stay afloat, just to stay in your happy place so that you don't have to deal with all of the negativity that comes with that type of relationship. However, it really is important that you develop boundaries. And as you're developing boundaries, and one thing that I love, I have not read this entire book, but I've read enough of it to know that it is super helpful in understanding why you need to develop boundaries and how to develop boundaries. So this book is literally called Boundaries. I don't even, oh, there is a subtitle. When to say yes, when to say yes, how to say no to take control of your life. It's by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. And I know I've mentioned this book in other videos as well, but sometimes we just need that resource that allows us to develop a skill that has been weak. And that's all. It doesn't mean that you don't have boundaries. It means that you have weak boundaries. And I too have had very weak boundaries in the past, and I've let people walk all over me, and I've let abusive people take advantage of me, and that is not okay. And it's been a muscle that's been developing over the course of many years, and it's still developing because I still allow it to happen because those muscles are still weak. The boundary muscles that I have, even though they're strengthening, are still weak in comparison to someone who has well-defined boundaries and who has a healthy sense of boundaries, because boundaries are healthy. It's very healthy to have your fence, so to speak, and the way the authors in this book describe it is like having your white picket fence around your home, and then your neighbor has his white picket fence around his home, and your neighbor on the other side has her white picket fence around her home. And so that if you have your white picket fence around your home, you're not going to send your dog over into your neighbor's yard to go to the bathroom, right? Because your boundaries, your business is within your white picket fence. So people with poor boundaries have those gates of the picket fence open continuously to let everybody else into their own private space and to do all of the stuff that they want to do in your private space, and then they leave, and then you're left to clean up the mess. So that's what it means to not have boundaries, or to have weakened boundaries, where you're not selective about who you're letting into the gates of your white picket fence. Does that make sense? However, one thing that the authors, Dr. Cloud and Dr. Townsend, write about in the book Boundaries is that when you start developing your boundaries from weak to strong, when you start to develop them, sometimes it can come out as very aggressive. When you speak to the person in your life that you have a dysfunctional relationship with, it might come out as shouting, it might come out as aggression, it might come out as passive-aggressive remarks, it might come out as blame, shame, guilt, anger, yelling, screaming, and it's not that it's so much that you're so spiteful and angry toward these people, as much as you're taking the consequences of all the weak boundaries that you've had accumulated over the course of many years, and now you're trying your new muscle. Let's suppose that your alcoholic loved one made you a promise to go to the movies, and you know that in the past, if they started drinking early in the day, that by the time the movie time came, let's say at 5 o'clock on a Saturday, that 9 times out of 10, which has happened in the past, that 9 times out of 10, your alcoholic person didn't show up to the movies at 5 o'clock on a Saturday. And so your weak boundaries are, you've let this happen again and again over the course of the years. And instead of setting your boundary that 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, by the 3rd time, if it continues to happen, you decided not to make plans with that person, period. Because they violated your trust. They violated the fact that when you make plans with someone, it's 50-50. There are 2 ends of this bargain here. It's not just all about one person. As a result of having those poor boundaries or weakened boundaries, now that you're assertive about your boundaries, you start to get angry and aggressive about it. So you say, if you don't show up at 5 o'clock on Saturday for our movie date, then I'm never, ever, ever, ever gonna talk to you ever again. That's being aggressive versus being assertive. And in reality, it's really tough, because I know we have these conversations with our alcoholic person in our life. I know we have them because I've had them, and if I've had them, I know that you have had them. The problem with that is that in certain relationships, it's not possible to hold to that promise of, I will never, ever, 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 ever talk to you ever again. In certain relationships, that's just not a promise you can fulfill. When you make an aggression like that versus being assertive like that, it almost weakens your boundaries again, because A, you're out of control, B, you're being aggressive, C, you're promising something that you probably can't or won't follow through on if they don't show up to the movie date. A good way to be assertive is to say, look, Sally, I know we've made arrangements in the past, several times in the past, to go to the movies on a Saturday afternoon. what I've noticed is that 9 times out of 10, if it's a Saturday afternoon, you've been drinking the whole day and you're either passed out or too drunk to drive, and so you're not showing up to the movies when you make those Saturday PM plans. If you're really wanting to go to the movies on a Saturday afternoon with me, I'm going to give you one more chance to prove that you can actually show up to this. And if you make the decision that you can't show up, I expect either a phone call way ahead of time so I can make other plans, and you can give a time. You can say by noon, if you're certain that you're not going to make it by 5 o'clock for the movie, give me a call so I can make other plans. Or let's not make plans to go to the movies together, or we can take the first showing of the day versus the later showing. So you can give options and alternatives as being assertive. Now, as things escalate, you can still be assertive rather than aggressive. And I know, again, this is so hard. This is a muscle that you are training in order to strengthen that muscle and learn better assertiveness skills, right? So again, I know it's hard. It's still hard for me. So I'm preaching to myself here. So another thing that you can do as you're creating stronger boundaries is that you can have cause and effect if you can follow through with the effect. Meaning, if Sally, your alcoholic sister, truly is continuing to not show up and you're making plans with her, you don't have to say, I'm never, ever, ever, ever going to talk to you again in my life, and I'm never going to call you, and I'm never going to care about you, and I don't love you anymore. You can say things like, I've noticed that because your drinking has increased, that you're not able to follow through on the plans that we make. Let's hold off making plans from now into the future until you're getting help for your drinking. Again, it sounds manipulative, it sounds a little cruel, but it's not, because you're not doing it for her, you're doing it for you. You're saying, I value my time, and I value the plans that I make, and I value people with follow through, and that people that don't follow through are disrespectful to my time and to my plans and to my sense of promptness, so that when I say to you, it just seems like you're not able to follow through on the plans that we make, so from now on, until you stop drinking, getting help for your drinking, then we can't make plans together. I mean, it's open-ended in the sense that saying, like, yeah, it's conditional, but at the same time, you're putting those boundaries up for yourself. And that's healthy. That's actually healthy. It's torturous, because if you don't put those boundaries up, it's torturous to you, because you're the sane person, hopefully. You're the sane person trying to carry out plans with a person who is not in a sane state of mind. And so you're setting yourself up for failure. And you know what? You're also setting them up for failure as well. So I would say, if you're in that situation, give the person a chance or two as you're developing your boundary setting, with the consequences verbally communicated as well. So it's cause and effect. If A, then B. If A, then C. Like, you have to have the cause and effect there so that they know what to expect, because this is new for them. This is new for anybody you're in a relationship with that is a dysfunctional relationship, that you haven't been communicating to them in that way. It's totally new to them. So you haven't been showing boundaries and strong boundaries, and now all of a sudden you're showing strong boundaries, and they're confused and they think it's a bluff and they don't understand what's going on. So you need to give them the benefit of having a few times, like 2 to 3 times maybe, of these newly set boundaries with you, in order for them to see the patterns that you're actually following through with what you said you were going to do. Now, that's the most important part of this. We get aggressive versus being assertive when A, we're not setting proper boundaries, but B, we're not following through with our boundaries that we've set. And so remember that disappointment in not setting those boundaries and not following through with what we said we were going to do, we're really angry at ourselves for not following through with those boundaries, right? We're not angry with them. Even though it comes out as anger toward them, it's anger at ourselves for not following through with the boundaries that we said we were going to follow through with. Does that make sense? So I hope this has helped you understand the difference between being aggressive and being assertive and healthy boundary setting versus weak boundary setting. So again, go back to that white picket fence and just think about what you would like to allow inside your white picket fence. So if you allow people that are dysfunctional and people that are not reliable and people who lie to you and people who cheat and people who drink excessively and people that are out of control into your white picket fence, then guess what? You're the one left with cleaning up the messes afterwards because you're the one that let that in. But if you hold your boundaries and keep them outside of your white picket fence, then they're left to pick up their own messes and clean up their own messes, and you're safe. So that's really the difference. And I know real life is not as clean cut as that. I totally get it and I understand. But good boundary setting and being assertive versus being aggressive, it takes a lot of practice, but it's well worth it in the end. So thank you so much for joining me. Please subscribe to my channel below. Share this video with friends, family, and your dog. Thank you for pledging your support on Patreon. I love it that some of you out there are pledging support. www.patreon.com/Michelle S. Fondon. And I will see you in the next video.